Hey guys, today we'll be solving lead code number 14, longest common prefix. It is an easy question on lead code, but it's definitely not so easy, I would say. The question itself states that if you're given an array of strings, so I'll take the first example straight up. We're given flower, flow, and flight, and we're supposed to get the most common prefix, like the longest common prefix. And what they mean by that is if we had an arrow, right? Let's think of an arrow that goes through the arrow size, let's just say is 1 character, okay? And we had to go through, well, all 3 elements and increment this arrow if and only if all 3 match. So L has to match L, F has to match F, F has to match F, right? And we will increment this when possible, and if it is not equal, then we can say that it is safe to say that the longest common prefix ends at that point. Why? Because let's consider if we had flow and flight straight up from this example. What are the common characters? Just think of that in order. What are the common characters? If we drew the arrow, we would get F and L, and I and 0 would say, okay, we are not equal, so we would end up just saying, okay, so the longest common one is FL, right? And if we just put in another string, let's just say sad or something, that when we do loop through FL, we will see S first, and this would immediately cause it to just be empty because there is no string, like no character at the start matches with each other, right? And that's the whole idea of this question. All we have to do is pick an arbitrary value, right? If we pick an arbitrary value, so if we say sad, and we check that the letter at that point, the arrow at that point with any other, and if it's not equal, then we can safely return our prefix at that point because that is the longest it will go for. Okay, so now that we have that part established, the coding is another, well, it's not exactly an issue, but it is a bit more complicated than your normal for loops. I think I'll just get straight to the coding actually. So if we just do, I'll have a prefix set up here, okay? The key behind this is you will have to, like, so we will pick each string, and we will have a baseline index, right? The arrow, consider that the arrow, we will have a baseline index that will just go and check F over here, F over here, F over here, right? And how would we do that? So now that we have I set up, how do we check each string? Well, for string in strings, or you can do it with a J, but I would just prefer this. And this over here, we can take it as an arbitrary value right now, so we can take str 0. That's completely fine. Another way you can approach this is by taking the minimum length among all strings. That would cost you O of n, but you can use that over here. The thing with it is, so essentially if we had sad, let's say if we had FLO and FLOW, our longest common prefix would still be FLO, right? So what I mean by that is it is bounded to the smallest length, right? If the length goes outside, then we have no characters to match, so immediately it will just say false, right? So that's the whole gist of it. Now for string insters, because string str itself is a data type, so now we can check if I is bounded, as in it's already out and it's on its length string, then we can return res over here, right? Res or prefix, whatever. But the next main thing is the fact that, well, like I said, we have to just check So we will check the strings I, right, to some arbitrary string 0. Let's just say you can have this literally be anything as long as it's within the length of the string, but 0 is the safest bet, right? So str 0 I, any, so you just pick anything pretty much. You could pick flower. If the array started with sad, you could start it with sad, whatever. And the key here is, well, because it has to all be equal, right? All of them have to be equal in the first character. If they're not, then you can safely return prefix whatever your answer was up until that point. If not, your prefix itself, you can add strings 0 I, like this, right? So this will build up the first f over here. At the end of the loop, the only time you will hit this is if you were given like flower and flower together, right? You will complete the whole loop and there would never be a case where you would hit this situation. So you would end up coming down here and you would return your flower as it's built out. But that's it for this question.